Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of season 2 of the QuitCast. And today we are going to be continuing the writer's block series. Specifically, today we're going to talk about how your personality can be a block for your writing. And this is something that I think is not intuitive for all of us. To think about how the way that I'm wired might actually be causing me to be stuck or stalled in a book or to stop writing completely. And it's something that's really important to consider. The ways in which our brains are different can have different impacts on the way that our process happens and also the way that we get stuck. So today we're going to talk just a little bit. I have Terry and Susan here with me. They're coaches at the Better Faster Academy, and we're all going to talk about how our strengths can impact the way that we might get blocked by writing. And so I'm going to let them go ahead and take it away, and then we're going to circle back around at the end, and I have a few more notes to add. So take it away, Terry, Becca, and Susan. Like sometimes with writers, the roadblock in a particular story will stop a strategic from writing because they can't see beyond something. Like they've either written themselves into a place where they can't see the end anymore because they changed something and they don't realize it. So a lot of times when high strategic writers are stuck in their manuscripts, they really need to take a minute and go backwards and look for that intuitive spot where either they went off in a different direction and they didn't intend to, or they changed something and it created a roadblock and they haven't seen it yet. The example I always use is if you have somebody run out the wrong door, like there's town to the east and the Death Valley to the west, and you have them run out the wrong door and you don't realize it yet. Sometimes your intuitive strategic brain will know that, and it will stop you from writing until you go realize what you've done, or you kind of figure out what you've done. And so a really important thing with high strategic when you're stuck is to look at what are the roadblocks that are in front of you. What can I not see beyond? Right. And to start sort of analyzing that.
And be aware of that. For instance, the same that just happened to me with my last book. At the end, I finished it. It seemed okay, but I couldn't see anything else of the story. And I'm familiar enough with my process. I mean, I told you, my ends are never the ends. I get to the ends and I have to take a day or two and I gauge reactions. And then it was you actually that said something didn't feel right. I changed one little thing. And as soon as I changed that thing, and it took me a day or two or day, as soon as I changed that one little thing, the next part of the story just jumped right into view. So exactly like you're saying. So learning that that's what it is. Because if without that self-knowledge and self-awareness, you would think I'm blocked or I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do it. And you'll get frustrated and spend a lot of time spinning your wheels. Whereas once you get familiar with it, you'll go searching in the right places for it, and not, instead of being stressed, you'll make that your productive time to look for it.
Yeah.
That makes strategic one of the strengths that needs to not always listen to the advice of don't edit as you go.
Yes.
Because if you force yourself to keep going, you're going to hit that wall and you're going to think it's something else.
And you won't be able to get beyond it. Like, this is the really important piece for me, is that when you have some of these more intuitive strengths that you don't always fully have control over, sometimes if you don't listen to them, there is no way to force that to happen. Like, you literally will be stuck forever. I have clients who got stuck on a book that have been stuck for 2 months, 6 months, 18 months, because they just won't go back and examine what is it that's wrong, right? They keep putting it aside and hoping that it's going to fix itself, but they're not changing any of the data. And I think that's one of the big pieces with strategic is sometimes you have to change the data. Like, both of these strengths as a power pair have some of the creativity, right, in common. Like, they have that, let's find a different way. Like, let's find a different path is a big strategic thing, or let's create a new idea, or let's create a new path is the ideation thing, right? And so you have that. If you don't listen, sometimes you'll stay stuck. And I think this is just in a writer's block sort of comment, I guess. This is one of the most common places that high strategics lose time, is that they don't have that self-awareness of how their strategic is anticipating. Because what will happen as you're live writing as a high strategic is you'll be imagining forward as far as you can see, right? Like, and most of the time, the reason you can't see beyond something is either you have to be there live to be able to turn the corner, or you have thrown up a roadblock for yourself that you don't realize that you've thrown up, and you need to go back and change it. And just to use Terry's story as an example, the roadblock that he threw up was something that he didn't think about until after he'd written it, right? It wasn't like, it didn't change the end of the book at all, really.
No, it didn't.
Like it didn't change the chapter.
No.
It literally was like one thing that wasn't happening in the chapter, and then one thing that needed to get the through line ended, right? So like, and it was an intuitive thing that no one could have told him. It was like you had to experience it. And I think that's the downside with strategic, that sometimes you do have to experience the stuckness in order to get past it.
And I've also gone the other way. I've gone ways where something's happened, because I'm a pantser. I've gone ways where something's happened and I'm like, there's no way. That is not right. This is not what I expected. And some authors will laugh, and that never happens in their books, but it happens in mine all the time. And I didn't give up, or I didn't bail on that. I just had to take a little more time and think of the repercussions of what I'd done. I killed a character that was not. I had no idea they were going to die, and so sometimes you want to turn back. Sometimes you want to turn a different way. Sometimes you just want to get your bearings and see a bigger part of the picture. So it doesn't always mean one thing. It depends.
Yeah. One of the considerations with writer's block, with both ideation and with strategic, is that your intuition is often a driver. Like, I can't tell you the number of strategic ideation people who are pantsers and who don't trust their intuition because they have been taught that you have to plot or outline in order to be an effective writer. But there's this sense with the strategic, and depending on how it works for you, right? If you have other strengths that change this, it might be different. But there's this sense with the strategic that if you try to know too much, right? Like if you try to know more than you should know, it's like you freeze it, right? Like there's some decisions with strategic you can't make until you get there. Like you literally can't objectively make some of these decisions. It's a very subjective strength. And so that's important as well.
The idea of working with somebody else where you have to over-explain is kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
Because you have to over-explain it for the other person, and then you're telling yourself stuff that you shouldn't know yet. You have to figure that out for the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. That high strategic is so interesting, right? Because it's so intuitive, and sometimes you can ruin it by the way that you follow advice of other people.
Like if you have other strengths that make you doubt yourself, then this is a challenge. Like if you need someone else's approval, if you need other people to tell you you're doing awesome, if you need people to tell you you're on the right track when you're not at that stage where you can reveal that you're on the right track yet, like it's easy for me because my self-assurance is always active. So when I send something to my editor and she says, well, I just don't get this, you have to change it. I'm like, that's because you don't understand where I'm going to be in 3 books. Like I'm planting this now for the payoff then. But if I didn't have that, I would change. A developmental editor would change my story. And so I think that's one thing you really want to be on the lookout for is with high strategic and high ideation, you're going to, like Susan said, you're going to explain it to people that don't get it. And so you're going to have to trust yourself and also trust the little things you see in them as well. But yeah, definitely.
We also need to stay really open to the possibilities when you have this combination. I think like we don't like to cut off the possibilities before we're ready to make a decision. So having to set that for somebody else is,
which may seem to others like that you can't make a decision or that you're wishy-washy
or you're wishy-washy.
They're like, oh, you can't commit to anything. No. It's you're absolutely right. So other people would see you as that, but the truth is, there's no closed doors. There's just another way to get to it. If it's 10 feet in the air, we'll find a ladder where another person will just walk past it and say it's impossible to get to. I think developer, maximizer, responsibility, because they end up they're pausing themselves for trying to make it better, or trying to make sure they haven't considered the wrong possibility, or if they get responsible to different strategies, right, or different things, and they hang on to that. So I've found all three difficulties with all three, and by that I mean them not wanting to let go, like resistance to accepting ideas or questioning the premise. Those three come to mind. And
responsibility is a huge one, because they'll often get stuck in a book, like for other reasons, like they might get stuck for strategic or intellection or input or learner, which are common. But the responsibility is what keeps them stuck in that particular book, because they're either so committed to what they outlined, or so committed to what they think should happen, or they're so committed to what they told somebody, like especially if
or
it
what
involves
someone told them.
Like their mentor or teacher or editor or coach or some guru somewhere taught them something. The other thing that can freeze responsibility a lot, which I find this interesting, is that if they promise fans that something is going to happen, they feel so beholden to make sure that it happens. And again, it's for good reasons. It's like the responsibility is a strength. We want to affirm that it's a generative thing.
A great strength, yeah.
But it can so often turn them into, I didn't know this particular thing was going to happen. Like I didn't know we were going to move across the country. I didn't know we were going to, but I promised my fans on May 1st that I would deliver a book. And so I have to. And then they end up creating more and more difficulty for themselves, because they're so committed to doing that thing that they said. And I'll admit, it's been hard when coaching responsibility people to walk them back away from that feeling, because they are like, commitment is the core of responsibility, right? And so it's been really difficult. But I always say, like, I always ask them, if you had known this was going to happen, would you have committed to this? And if they say no, then I'm like, then you're released. You're released, right?
Responsibility also has that and woo of if they know what their fans want, then they feel like they have to deliver it, even if it goes contrary to who they are as a writer or their story. They get caught in that conflict.
Yeah.
Or if they hear from someone, like I had someone the other day tell me, thriller writers, it can't be pantsers.
Oh.
And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
What? Yeah, all I can do is this.
Oh, now we know.
So question the crap out of that premise.
Yeah, I should have. And so so then what we do is, or what I do is, I find thriller writers who are pantsers, and then go, well, this person is, and these questions are, and or they get committed to a book as well, right? Like just a dog that they should leave, but they got on board. So it's a great responsibility, is a great strength, and but when you get into a basement with it, it can be very tenacious to hold on. It's very committed, very committed.
When again, every strength has a basement that can cause writer's block. And I think that's sort of the theme of this, of this show. But when it is very specific to certain types of writer's block, it can be harder to overcome than others. Like I would say, as a general rule, like I've seen, for instance, input writer's block happen, where they have output everything, they've squeezed their sponge out, and they have nothing left to give, and they have not let themselves input again. And then they input for a little bit. I mean, sometimes a long bit, right? Depending on how much they squeezed out. And then they can write again, and then they're fine. And that's almost an easier version of breaking writer's block, because it doesn't require a lot of resistance. Like usually when you tell them, hey, it's okay to go input, it'll make you write again, they're like, really? And then they just go binge read, right?
Right. And I love your definition of writer's block as well. That's not the common thing that people think of. Yours is more comprehensive and more inclusive, right? It makes
anything that blocks us, right?
Right.
Like, but
a lot of other authors that I've run into, and a lot of these people that are aloof and say it doesn't exist, I think if they talk to you, they would admit that sure, under that condition you couldn't write. Sure, under that condition you can write. So I like your definition, and I think it warrants more exploration because of it.
Yeah, if you have those strengths that are plumbing towards something, or that have a goal that they're seeking, or they have a level of certainty threshold that they need to pass in order to really function well, that's absolutely going to be a block. I think the most common one I probably see of that whole group, well, let's say there's two different scenarios. With new writers who have high learner, there's often a lot of writer's block that happens because they feel like they don't know everything yet. They don't know enough to be able to really produce a good novel, is the comment that I hear a lot. And so that lack of certainty in their own skill is keeping them from writing. And I think in that particular case, I'm usually a fan of walking through with them as a coach, which parts of the writing are you not sure of? And are those parts important to be sure of right now in order to start a book, right? Because an awful lot of people who come in to Write Better Faster are stalled as learners because they've been taking classes for years trying to figure out how to be the world's best novelist, thinking that if I can get through all the classes, then I can finally start, instead of looking at your actual skill level and saying, is it important to know how to run Facebook ads before you finish a book? No, it's not. Like, you need to know how to finish a book before you can run Facebook ads. And so, like, there's that level of certainty seeker that can be an issue, I think, with high learner for sure.
What other strengths fall into the certainty seekers?
So intellection is a big one. Intellection for me as a certainty seeker is the, when you get writer's block, is the, I haven't thought about this enough. I can't see this enough. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I can't conceive of it. There's something I don't understand yet. And they'll often feel that lack of certainty about the starting point. Like, usually with anything when you're feeling like you can't start yet, it's coming from a lack of certainty. And so we need to see if we can up that. What's interesting for me with intellection as a certainty seeker is that if you can trick it into experimenting, sometimes you can tell if it's actually your competency with the story or if it is something else, right? Like, if you try to start and can't, like, some people can't even open the manuscript, right? Like, they can't even sit down at the desk and open the manuscript. That's a level of certainty that we can experiment with, because sitting down at the desk and opening the manuscript is not, like, in the scheme of certainty, that's not actually putting words down on the page yet. So if you're not ready to put words down on the page, let's see if we can get you to sit down at the desk and open the manuscript first, and then let's see what happens. And I think that needing to feel 100% certainty is, we don't often question the premise of it, and we should. I would say maximizer can be a really big basement behavior.
Sure. Yeah.
With that, because and is on some level not a certainty seeker in the same way as intellection and learner, but definitely has some of it, because it's the when have I gotten it to the place that it's excellent enough, depending on how perfection oriented the maximizer is, which is a basement of maximizer. The when to stop maximizing threshold can be difficult, I think. So interestingly, some of the relationship building strengths, when they come up as stopping your productivity or stopping your forward motion, it's often less about the book itself we did talk about empathy in one of our podcasts, as sometimes when you feel the feelings of the character, you have a hard time moving forward, because the empathy will make you have to feel what they're going through, and you may not want to write that part. But I think of things like harmony, includer, relator, positivity, sometimes woo as well, empathy for sure, sometimes developer also, in connectedness. I would say the most common thing that will stop the relationship building strengths are external relationships that are either out of whack, or something is in crisis or something. And so some of that, there's very little we can personally do about it, right? Like other than deal with the relationship. But and we're also going to talk about that in a future podcast more. But that's the most common thing that I see from the relationship building strengths.
The one relationship would be individualization, or it might also be any other one that makes relationships with the characters, though. That can slow people up. I don't want that to happen to them. Or we saw one, Susan dealt with one today that was, I saw individualization. There were so many characters, and because you want to get so detailed, I think that was causing them to freeze up as well, having so many characters to worry about and the empathy to feel it all. That can slow you down as well, right? Because this was a great character. I came up with it. How do I put it in the background now? How do I give everyone the front and center stage when I've only got this many words? That can paralyze you too. No, I'm just kidding.
So we haven't yet talked about restorative.
Restorative, restorative for sure can be a big problem.
That's a really important one to talk about, because restorative, of course, being the problem solver and seeing all of the problems, that's like restorative and maximizer are those places that can sort of tend towards the perfectionism and wanting to make everything perfect.
Restorative deliberative, restorative maximizer, those people can really low positivity, boom, off you go.
Yeah. Like you can absolutely get stuck trying to fix too many things. And we actually had a conversation with somebody about this today, about what is your job as a writer? Is it your job to fix every single problem? No, it's not. And again, people who are not restorative fix your problems. Like people who have low restorative are more likely to be like, it's the editor's problem. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who have high restorative and high maximizer who can't let something go because they're so worried that there are mistakes in there. You have got to trust your editors to do their job. Like you have to trust them to do their job. Susan, as an editor, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I think Susan would say really use an editor a lot. Maybe pay them twice for 2 go-rounds, at least 2 go-rounds.
Yeah.
I would say, if you fix your problems if you don't have high restorative, but also don't send them all to the editor, but also, don't try to fix what's not broken. Make sure it's broken and get outside opinions, even if it's not an editor, even if it's somebody in your genre who knows what they're doing, who doesn't need to make your work just like their work. Find out if it's a problem before you go crazy trying to fix it. Yeah,
I agree. That's hard for restorative sometimes. It's hard for a maximizer, right? Because that with it for a restorative, having something completely restored and transformed is the baseline for them, right? Like that's where they want things to go to. And with maximizer, it's I want everything to be so excellent and so superb that I can't accept anything below that that threshold. And so that can definitely be, an issue as well, as far as, is it going to stop you?
Yeah. And one thing I've learned never to say to a maximizer is there's no such thing as perfect. Their worlds can't take that. They can't accept that.
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
Exactly.
That's just mean. That's just mean.
I said it to Becca. I didn't realize what a big deal it was to her. I'm still apologizing. I've never said it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you have, but only in jest.
That's right. Exactly.
It's nice that you took him back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because she saw there was lots of work that she could do on me to make me better.
You're not perfect yet. No,
I'm a
just
maximizer's dream.
yeah.
It's good to have a project.
That's right.
It is good to have a project.
One that will never be done.
So we haven't talked about significance. And that is interesting. So I see a couple of roadblocks with significance people that are very different. One is when you have had a lack of significant impact with books in the same series. It is really common. And Terry can tell you how common it is with one of my own personal series, which I have been working on this book for 2.5 years, because I feel like the first 3 books didn't make the impact that I thought they should make, right? And I've had writer's block like you wouldn't believe on this book. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. Like the number of times I have started and restarted and tried to finish this.
So many times I thought we had you going. I thought we had you back in it. You were going. The next day you're like, oh, I wrote 2,000 words of it. Then gone. It's done again.
Yeah.
Back. But that makes sense, right? That makes a lot of sense. And that's not just significance. Other people will do that with analytical or different strengths, but significance
woo is another big one. So significance and woo are the 2 biggest ones as far as self-assurance. It can happen with as well. And again, we're talking about all the influencing strengths, right? We're talking about self-assurance. We're talking about woo. We're talking about significance. This was supposed to make an impact, dang it. Why didn't it make the impact that it should have made? Why am I wasting my time? Like I'll literally sit there sometimes and think about all the people who email me to get the next Vanjie book. And I'll be like, oh, they want it. Like there's significance coming at me, right? And I'll be like, oh, I'm going to get this done for them. And then I think, so if only 400 people ever read this book, is it worth me writing it? And that thought literally goes through my head.
That's the question you have to ask in order to move forward.
Yeah.
And for me, you're right. It is my self-assurance that goes a different way. I get quite more angry than you do.
Yes, you get mad. I get
very
sad.
angry. When 50 people tell me they want the next book, I'm like, only 50 people are wasting my time asking for this book. But significance was like 50 people want it, that they're all, and that's who you focus on, right? So
well, it depends on what your expectations were for the book.
Well, like that's another thing. Significance expectations are always going to be grand, which is proper. Like that's the strength. There's nothing wrong with that. And we're taught to feel embarrassed about that, but significance should not feel embarrassed about that. Everyone should write a book expecting to sell 1 million copies and be on Oprah. They really should. I love it. I love significance for that. But they feel bad about it. And then if it doesn't do it,
well, we don't like to talk about it, right? Like we don't like to talk about the fact that those are the grandiose dreams that we have for projects, because then it makes us sound like we're overblowing or whatever. When in reality, it's like, well, no, I'm not going to spend my time doing things that I don't think have the potential to change the world. Like, why would I waste my time doing things that I think, like, for me, who cares about me? Not that I don't care about me, right? But like, the one of the things that was so interesting about learning about self-assurance writers was the commonality that self-assurance people have in writing their books for themselves. Like in literally being their first reader. I was like, I never would have thought of that in a million years, of being my own first reader. Like I always write for someone else, right? As a significance. There have been a couple of requests from people to do specific writer's block episodes only about each strength, right? And so there's a possibility that we may actually do that, even though what we're trying to do today is kind of hit the big picture and talk about what the most common blocks that we see are from our coaching experiences. There are ways that every single strength can get blocked. And obviously we didn't cover all of them today. And I want to hit just a couple of the highlights, the one-liner highlights that we missed. High achievers, it's common to get blocked when you're not seeing the success that you think you should be seeing based on the work that you're putting in. And usually this block comes around because you are trying to figure out what it was that you did wrong or what you can do right next time. And so it's really important in this industry, of course, to take a look at whether or not it's realistic to expect yourself to have done whatever it was that you did, because the industry is capricious and there is no fairness, which of course leads us to the consistency block that can sometimes happen, which is I'm playing all the rules, I'm doing everything right. Why am I not seeing the results that I should see? And then they can get blocked or stalled as well. And that is a big issue with consistency because the industry is not fair, right? There is no fairness when it comes to there is no fairness according to merit, let's say. So there are good books out there that don't get seen and that don't get bought. And there are people who are writing what they consider to be their best book, and it's not, and they're not seeing the results, right? And so sometimes with that consistency, responsibility, maybe discipline, sometimes belief, can absolutely cause a stall, and that's normal. Competition can have that same effect as well. And almost what we say for achiever can apply to the competition. Why are other people able to get done what I can't get done can cause a lot of stalled behavior in high competition, or the pushing yourself. And this is common with both achiever and competition, and sometimes focus. The pushing yourself too hard can lead to burnout or can lead to illness, right? And then that can cause stall as well. High command, high activator can occasionally see a stall when it comes to not being able to take action, not being able to have that moment of clarity where you can see what happens because there are factors that you don't know, or there are things that you can't control. And also sometimes command and activator can get over busy. A ranger can sometimes do this, achiever, connectedness can sometimes do this. So there is when you are overcommitted, or there's too much to do, or you're not saying no to people, and then you get stalled because there's literally no more time in your day, then that is also a place where you can get blocked. Obviously, we've talked in the past about the way that the stability needs can have an effect on writer's block. If you have a high harmony, if you have a high relator, a high empathy, and things are out of whack, it's normal to get stuck or stalled until that gets back into whack, I guess, or until you can find that stability. We didn't really talk a lot about communication, which is one that can sometimes get frustrated when the message isn't landing correctly, or when it feels like you've done everything you can do, and there's nothing more to be said, and things still aren't happening, right? And one of the future episodes we're going to cover is the unrealistic expectations. And how to practice resilience when it comes to the way that our unrealistic expectations can stall us. And that can relate to some of these things that we've talked about today as well. If you have not yet taken the strengths test and you want to take it, there's a link to the Gallup website where you can purchase a code. You can purchase codes from us. If you'd like to email us, assistant@betterfasteracademy.com is the email that you'll want to use, and you can ask Annette to hook you up with one of those discount codes. And then there additionally is an option for you to learn more in our Strengths for Writers Facebook group. Please check out the facebook.com/strengths, the number 4, and then writers. So Strengths for Writers. And there are some good resources in there. We have a lot of conversations about either being stuck or stalled, or having a growth edge with one of your strengths. How do your strengths work in your writing, that kind of thing. And of course, strengths are only one piece of personality. There are other personality metrics that might impact how you write. But the one that we like to deal with the most here is strengths, because it's the most predictable version of personality assessment that we've seen, and we use it all the time. And so I hope this has been helpful. We're going to continue on with more Writer's Block episodes in the future, and please do join us in future weeks for those. If you are interested in connecting more, either for coaching, if you would like more information, if you want to be able to join any of our classes, which are still being held, please either come to the Patreon, www.patreon.com/BECCASYME, Becca Syme, or you can email us, again, assistant@betterfasteracademy.com for more information, but we'd love to hear from you. So we hope this was helpful. I hope that you stay well and do good work, and we will see you in the next QuitCast. Bye.